Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. The senators and all in attendance will stand and be led in prayer by the Reverend Dr. Rich Bardouche, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church in Herndon, Virginia. And the senators will remain standing and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America by Senate Page John Zadok Lewis.
Let us pray. O God, the fountain of wisdom, whose will is good and gracious, and whose law is truth, we beseech thee so to guide and bless our senators in the legislature of this Commonwealth, that they may enact such laws as shall please thee, to the glory of thy name and the welfare of this people. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Clerk will call the roll. All those present will please record their vote aye. The clerk will close the roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. President. Senate Journal for Monday, January 28, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis, moves that the reading of the journal be waived. All in favor of waiving the reading of the journal will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 3.
Ayes 37, noes 3. The reading of the journal is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the House of Delegates. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully move we waive the reading of any communications received from the House of Delegates.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the communication from the House of Delegates be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. The reading of the communication from the House of Delegates is waived. The clerk will report any communication from the governor.
We do not have any, sir.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now comes the time in the morning hour where we have the privilege and honor of welcoming our distinguished guests with us here in the Senate gallery. As a daily reminder, the way this will proceed is a senator will stand up and recognize an individual or a group. I will then offer the warm welcome of the Senate, and we will all wait till the end and clap together at once. I'd like to begin by calling on the senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
I thank the senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President and members of the body, I rise today to recognize and thank Reverend Dr. Rich Bardouche for delivering this morning's invocation. Father Rich was born in Hampton, and as a child he grew up in Yorktown Battlefield. And an interesting point that I just learned a few minutes ago was that when he was young, his babysitter was Shirley Cooper, who was a member of the House of Delegates back in the 70s and the 80s. So he's familiar with this area, but he's not ever been to visit us before. Now, the 33rd Senate District is proud to have him as the rector at my church, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church in Herndon. Father Rich is a graduate of Emory and Henry College, Duke Divinity School, Andrew University has given him his doctorate of ministry in congregational development. He also completed a year of Anglican studies at EDS in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His spiritual discipline includes centering prayer, study, and simple living. As you heard, that he gave us a very simple and brief prayer today. He's a gardener, a sci-fi fan, a patio reader extraordinaire, not necessarily in that order. He loves dogs and traveling and being the center of a vibrant religious community. And just wanted to also point out that this past November, St. Timothy's celebrated its 150th anniversary in Herndon. Under the guidance of Father Rich, St. Timothy's is dedicated to serving the poorest in our community with a long local tradition of outreach. And Mr. President, I hope you will extend a warm welcome to Father Rich Bardouche. Thank you.
I thank the Senator. Would Reverend Dr. Rich Bardouche please rise in the gallery? Reverend Bardouche, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for that really lovely prayer that you offered, and I think everybody felt very touched by it and got us off to the right foot. And we echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Northwestern Fairfax about your moral leadership here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are very grateful for all that you do, and I would ask everybody to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Reverend Bardouche. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise for purposes of two introductions.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have in the gallery one of the supervisors from Caroline County, Jeff Seeley. Jeff has been very active in the community for a number of years and very active in the community at Dahlgren as well in his work capacity. Mr. President, it's my request that you offer the warm welcome of the Senate to Supervisor Jeff Seeley and thank him for his efforts on behalf of Caroline and the Commonwealth.
I thank the Senator. Would Supervisor Jeff Seeley please rise in the gallery if you're able? Supervisor Seeley, thank you so much for joining us here today. Thank you for your leadership on the Board of Supervisors in Caroline and also for all that you do here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Hanover. We are very grateful to you, and you're welcome back here anytime in the Senate. And I would ask everybody to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Supervisor Jeff Seeley. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for the purposes of a second introduction, Mr. President, I'd like you to offer the warm welcome of the Senate to Seward and Ann McGee from Hanover. Mr. President, they are not here for such a joyous occasion. Mr. President, their daughter passed away because of an opioid overdose, and they were in committee this week, so members of the Courts of Justice got to hear their very passionate testimony and hear about the experience that they have had to deal with personally because of their daughter Dylan's death. Mr. President, I just want you to offer the thanks of the Senate and the warm welcome because of their willingness to share their pretty horrific story about how Dylan died and one of the efforts that can be made to help that not to happen to another daughter of the Commonwealth again. But Mr. President, if you could offer the thanks and appreciation of the Senate for them willing to share their story and be here today.
I thank the Senator. Would Seward and Ann McGee please rise in the gallery if you're able? Seward and Ann, thank you all so much for joining us here today in the Senate. We echo the kind and generous words of the Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal. We are grateful to your family for turning the pain into purpose and making Dylan's life one that's going to help many other lives with an issue that we're dealing with all throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's an inspiration to have a family who's willing to step up to fight on behalf of so many other families. So we thank you. I know all 40 senators are deeply grateful to you, our entire staff, the entire Senate family. We wish you nothing but the best, and you're welcome back here anytime as a part of this family. I would ask everybody to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to Seward and Ann McGee. The Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, I would like to welcome to the Capitol and to our gallery today a number of people who are visiting from Lord Fairfax Community College. They came into the office to visit, and they're here advocating on behalf of all the programs that they offer at the community college and all the things that are happening in our community. From the Middletown campus, we have Brandon Angel, Sarah Downs, Jacob French, and Zach Weaver. From the Fauquier campus, we have David Bellier, Garrett Bosk, and Kelsey Kissel. And then we have a number of college officials who are here today, Leave Hagoy, Kelly Williams, and Chris Lambert. And I would ask that you please extend to them the very warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our friends from Lord Fairfax Community College in the gallery please rise if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today in the Senate. We are proud to have you with us, and also echo the generous, eloquent words of the Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel, who I know is very supportive of the work that you do at Lord Fairfax Community College. He was a relative of mine, so we're very close to that community college, and grateful to all the work you do to expand the scope of opportunity and education for so many of our families to help them to rise. And so we join the Senator from Fauquier, and I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warm welcome of the Senate to our friends from Lord Fairfax Community College. Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're joined today by Lorraine Hightower and some of the families from Decoding Dyslexia, Virginia. I know some of them have been around to your offices. There's quite a large group, and we could only fit so many in here today. I think everyone in here has either friends, families with children who have dyslexic challenges. This Decoding Dyslexia is a grassroots movement that is implementing policies that provide resources, support, and educational intervention for dyslexia, which is a very treatable condition and something that can make just a monumental difference to children's lives. They aim to raise dyslexia awareness, to empower families, to support their children, and inform policymakers on best practices. Today we're joined by Lorraine Hightower, by Kristen Kane, Nikki McMahon, Brendan McMahon, Ronald McMahon, Declan McMahon, Keegan McMahon, Melinda Mansfield, Josie Mansfield, Will Mansfield, Carrie Bordeaux, Ashley Blevins, Melinda Vicosian, and John David V. Casas. I hope that we can give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our friends from Decoding Dyslexia, Virginia, please rise in the gallery if you are able? Great. All over the Senate. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. We see so many beautiful, young, smiling faces, and we're always happy to see you here in the Senate and in the Capitol. Thank you for your leadership and your advocacy on such an important issue for our families and helping young people and adults to thrive and to rise. It shows your commitment and your heart, and it really is the best of what we have to offer in the Commonwealth of Virginia, people who step up on behalf of others. And so I'm deeply grateful to you, as we all are. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black. And I would ask everyone please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from Decoding Dyslexia, Virginia. Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for an introduction.
I thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, visiting us from the gallery today are representatives from the Central District Commissioners of the Revenue Association. With us today are the Honorable Jennifer Hughes, Chesterfield County, the Honorable Laura Walsh from Amelia County, the Honorable Amy Carr from Southampton County, the Honorable Deborah Reeson from the City of Hopewell, the Honorable Brenda Powell from Halifax County, the Honorable Joyce Prince, City of Emporia, the Honorable Martha Swinson from Greensville County, the Honorable Joseph Ed Taylor, Mecklenburg County, the Honorable Lori Stevens, Dinwiddie County, and the Honorable Denise Smith, Charles City County. The Central District is comprised of 31 localities stretching from Charles City County west to Louisa, south to Pennsylvania, and east to Southampton. These public servants are dedicated to serving their constituents by uniformly and fairly assessing local taxes to invest in public services, processing state income tax returns, and administering tax relief programs for Virginia's veterans, seniors, and disabled citizens. This year, Mr. President, marks the 100th anniversary of the Commissioners of the Revenue Association. And Mr. President, I would ask that you please extend the warm welcome of the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Would our leaders from the Central District, Commissioners of the Revenue, please rise in the gallery if you're able. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Thank you also for your tremendous leadership as commissioners here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You do such a great job, and you elevate each of the communities that you serve and ultimately the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. We also congratulate you on the 100th anniversary of the Commission of the Revenues Association. It's a proud milestone, and I think the next 100 years will be even greater because of the leadership that each one of you continues to show every single day. So I would ask everyone to please echo the eloquent words of the Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance, and join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our Commissioners of the Revenue from the Central District. Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today we have with us, on behalf of Senator Locke and Senator Norman and me, I hope that you will welcome the Peninsula Agency on Aging. This is a spectacular group, and I probably should include some other senators because they have such broad reach. They work with all areas of aging: nutrition, care, caregiving, transportation, and advanced care directives is one of their big pushes, Mr. President. How many of us on the floor, I won't ask for a show of hands, have an advanced care directive? Well, they're talking to you about it on a regular basis, among other things. President and CEO Bill Massey, his executive team, and the members of the board of directors here, Mr. President, and I hope you will extend the warm wishes of the Senate and our thanks for such great work that they do for us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Would our friends of the Peninsula Agency on Aging please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today, and also thank you for your tremendous leadership on behalf of all of us, frankly, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, giving dignity, health care, and opportunity to those of us who are aging, which is all of us. And so it really is important, the work that you do every day. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason, who, again, I know is joined by Senator Norman, Senator Locke, and really all of us in expressing our gratitude for your leadership. So I would ask everyone, please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leaders from the Peninsula Agency on Aging. The senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturdivant.
Mr. President, I rise for an introduction.
I thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, joining us in the Senate gallery this afternoon are members of the Powhatan Leadership Institute. The Powhatan Leadership Institute is about 35 members from the county of Powhatan who are learning and becoming engaged in their community, both at the local and the state level. They are here touring the Capitol today, and I had the opportunity to meet with them along with Delegate Ware this morning and discuss issues that are going on in the General Assembly, and it's great to have them here, and I ask that we offer them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our friends from the Powhatan Leadership Institute in the gallery please rise if you're able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today in the Senate. We are grateful for your presence and for your leadership in Powhatan and throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. We would certainly echo the eloquent words of the senior senator from Richmond City, who I know represents you as well. And thank you for really focusing on issues that really matter to all of our families, on the economy, on health care, transportation, the things that make this Commonwealth a great place to live, work, and raise a family. I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from the Powhatan Leadership Institute. Senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley. Just in time.
Just in time, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you, Senator.
Thank you. I have many introductions, so I rise for the purposes of 4 introductions.
The Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to remind everybody in the chamber and certainly in the gallery that today board members and staff from the electric cooperatives across Virginia are here in the Capitol advocating for their very fine companies. From Fairfax to Halifax to my home in Franklin County to our eastern shore, electric cooperatives provide electricity to over 1.2 million Virginians. Cooperatives are not-for-profit utilities that are owned by who they serve, their members. Their board members and management are also local ratepayers. That gives them a unique understanding of the effects of their policies and an ability to respond to local priorities. I can tell you, Mr. President, we love our co-ops because they take the time to care about us and to provide a very essential need to rural areas and those that otherwise may not be served. Mr. President, co-ops continue to lead the way on bringing middle mile and last mile broadband to our rural communities, and they have the capacity and the wherewithal, the drive, and the motivation to do so. They lead the way on increasing access to clean renewable energy. They had Virginia's first community solar program, and today a majority of cooperatives offer their customers access to community solar. I don't know if they're in the gallery today, Mr. President, but they certainly have been roaming the halls of the Pocahontas building. And, Mr. President, our co-ops are the founders and pillars of our rural communities across Virginia, and I would ask that the body and you, sir, extend to them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the Senator. Would our friends from the electric cooperatives of Virginia in the gallery please rise if you're able? Well, I will thank you on television, and thank you so much. We are grateful for your work and for your leadership. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley, about what you do for our 1.2 million Virginians and to make our Commonwealth a better place to live and to do business. And so we look forward to much more success for each one of you. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from the electric cooperatives of Virginia. Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very pleased and honored to announce that to the body that we have in our balcony today a sorority, the Delta Kappa Gamma Society, and they asked me to provide them with an introduction to the members of the Senate and to you, Mr. President. Delta Kappa Gamma Society International, they support public education as guarantors of equality of opportunity in education. They seek to attract and retain excellent teachers and other educational leaders and personnel. They want those teachers and personnel to have the expertise to bring the very best education to our children here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And they support all programs that will benefit public school children in Virginia. And so there, Mr. President, we are honored to have them, a great organization, and I ask that you extend the warm welcome of the Senate to the Delta Kappa Gamma Society International.
Thank the Senator. Would our leaders from Delta Kappa Gamma Society International please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here with us today in the Senate. We are honored by your presence and grateful for your work, particularly your focus on public education, supporting our teachers and students and personnel. I know they are deeply appreciative, and we are as well, as that's a foundation of opportunity for so many of our families around the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we thank you for your work and your leadership. We echo the eloquent and generous words of Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley, and I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our leaders from Delta Kappa Gamma Society International. Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I promise this is the last one, but of course it's a very important one. The ARC of Virginia is an incredible advocate for those who need the most advocacy and need the most support. They come here every year, of course, and they advocate on behalf of those that they care about and support. And so for those reasons, we're always glad to see them, and they're up here in the Senate gallery today. And so if you would extend to them the warm Senate welcome, I would appreciate you to welcome the ARC of Virginia.
I thank the senator. Would our friends from the ARC of Virginia please rise in the gallery if you are able? No? Okay, great. Stand if you'd like. You don't have to. Great. Thank you. And you definitely deserve 2 rounds of applause. So thank you all so much for being here with us today. We are so grateful for your leadership and always happy to see the bright orange scarves that signify advocacy and progress for all of our families and fighting for opportunity for everyone. And so thank you for what you do every single day. You, of course, are always welcome here in the Senate. We join the Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley, in welcoming you here to the Capitol. And I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from the ARC of Virginia. Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I feel like Senator Vogel when she gets people from Loudon, Winchester up here. I could do this all day. Mr. President, I rise for the purposes of a final introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Look, this is, I've been really proud to announce the people that have been in the gallery today, but these are fine men and women that defend us every day, keep us safe, work tirelessly at long hours to make sure that our communities are growing and thriving. And quite frankly, Mr. President, I've said this before, but I'll say it again to this body. These men and women do this job at pay rates that are much lower than other states, and they do it because they love Virginia and they love their communities and they love their own family and want to protect them. Today we have Southside area sheriffs that have joined us to advocate on behalf of their causes, and certainly I always love seeing them. I always say that this is the only time when I'm surrounded by a bunch of sheriffs that I don't get nervous or don't think I need a lawyer. So it's always good to see them. Remember, these are all members of the Virginia Sheriff's Association, where John Jones is executive director and represents over 8,000 deputy sheriffs and 116 sheriffs. So, Mr. President, in our audience today are the great Sheriff Steve Draper from the city of Martinsville, Sheriff Lane Perry from Henry County, Sheriff Mike Mondul from the great city of Danville, Sheriff Mike Taylor, not Sheriff Andy Taylor, Sheriff Mike Taylor from Pittsylvania County, but you can't tell the difference, really. We also have Major Laura Hopkins from the city of Martinsville, Captain Dina Davis from the city of Martinsville, Captain Kevin Turner from the city of Martinsville, Lieutenant Mike Law from the city of Martinsville, and Deputy Dean Comer from the city of Martinsville. Obviously, in Martinsville today, you can speed through downtown because all of the law enforcement is here. So, Mr. President, if you extend not just my gratitude for everything that they do, but also the warm welcome of the Senate to these very brave men and women, I'd certainly appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank the senator. Would our leaders from the Southside area sheriffs of Henry County, Danville, Pennsylvania, and Martinsville please rise in the gallery if you're able? Thank you all so much for being here with us today. We are grateful for your work every single day on our behalf in law enforcement. We're also grateful to your families because, as we know, law enforcement is a family endeavor, and so please give them our deepest gratitude. We echo the generous words of the Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley, about what your work means to the Commonwealth of Virginia and how important it is, and we look forward to supporting you in every aspect of the work that you do. I know that all 40 senators, our entire staff, and everyone in the gallery will gladly join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our great leaders in law enforcement in Southside Virginia. Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I haven't gotten a green sheet yet. I understand that only part of my group is upstairs.
Okay. Do you want to?
Are there others?
No. Well, actually, hold on one second. There's one more, but did you want to wait?
If you would let me wait just for your one more, yes, sir.
Okay. Perfect. The senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Senator. How are you?
Busted. Thank you, Mr. President. Today in the gallery, we have the Autism Society from Central Virginia, and I've enjoyed meeting with them in my office earlier today, and I would just ask if we could please give them the warm welcome of the Senate.
I thank the senator. Would our friends from the Autism Society of Central Virginia please rise in the gallery if you are able? Hello. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. Again, it's always a pleasure to have you here in the Senate and in the Capitol. I know that we all appreciate your advocacy and your commitment to such an important issue and addressing it on behalf of all of our families and our young people in particular. So we would join the senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, in her warm greetings. And I would ask everyone to please join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from the Autism Society of Central Virginia. Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for introduction.
Senator has the floor.
Today, I wanted to welcome supporters of Equality Virginia from across the Commonwealth. And I was thinking back to the first time I came to Richmond, which was 29 years ago, when I came to advocate for a group that was previously called Virginians for Justice and now Equality Virginia. Now celebrating their 30th anniversary this year, they're the leading advocacy organization in the state, working every day on behalf of over 200,000 LGBT Virginians. And the organization believes in a truly inclusive Commonwealth where all are equally valued, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender or identity. They're advocating today in Capitol Square and in communities across the Commonwealth to ensure that Virginia is a safe, welcoming, and equal-oriented place for all individuals and their families, including our schools. And tonight there's a reception from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Library of Virginia that you're all invited to. And Mr. President, I ask that you extend the warm greetings of the Senate to our friends and neighbors from Equality Virginia.
I thank the senator. Would our friends from Equality Virginia please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today in the Senate. It's always an honor and a privilege to have you here. We are grateful for your work every single day on behalf of really all of us to make equality a value and a principle that exists throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. You're fighting for a safe, welcoming, and equal Virginia, and I think that's something that we all deeply appreciate. And so we echo the generous and eloquent words of the senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben. You're welcome back here anytime. And congratulations on your 30th anniversary. I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our friends from Equality Virginia. Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds.
Rise for an introduction.
Thank the senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the Senate today is Mental Health Advocacy Day, and there are people here from all corners of the Commonwealth, led by Voices for Virginia's Children, the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Virginia, Vocal Virginia, and Mental Health America Virginia. They're spending the day meeting with their elected officials to remind you of the numbers, which suggest even though we've done an awful lot of work the last few years, we still have an awful lot of work still to do. And to also talk to you about the stigma that surrounds mental illness and prevents it from being treated like other diseases. As we address mental health together, it's my hope that we can make much needed improvements in access to care and availability of services in our communities for adults and children. Mr. President, I'd ask you to give them the warm greetings of the Senate.
I thank the senator. Would our friends who are here on Mental Health Advocacy Day please rise in the gallery if you are able? Thank you all so much for joining us here today. We're always happy to have you in the Capitol, but particularly on an important day like today. Thank you for your leadership around such an important issue, destigmatizing mental health. It is health like all other aspects of health, and we have made some strides, as Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds said, but there is much further for us to go, and you're helping to move that arc in the right direction and make us move toward progress here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we are grateful to every single one of you. You are making this Commonwealth a better place for all of us. We echo the generous and eloquent words of the Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds, who has been a champion on this and other issues. And I would ask everyone please to join me in extending the warmest welcome of the Senate to our distinguished guests. Do any other senators wish to be recognized for purposes of an introduction? Is there any other business to come in the morning hour? Seeing none, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Tuesday, January 29, 2019. Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on third reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just respectfully move now that all of the Senate bills on the third reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 1 through 14, including Senate Bill 1594 through Senate Bill 1746, be placed on their final passage in the block. If any senator would like to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar third reading, pages 1 through 14, Senate Bill 1594 through Senate Bill 1746, be placed upon their final passage in the block, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1594.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Can Senate Bill 1594 please go out of the block and by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1594 will come out of the block and go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1004. Senate Bill 1068. Senate Bill 1069. Senate Bill 1106. Senate Bill 1144, Senate Bill 1195, Senate Bill 1217, Senate Bill 1234, Senate Bill 1247, Senate Bill 1280, Senate Bill 1292, Senate Bill 1333, Senate Bill 1336.
Mr. President.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Can Senate Bill 1336 be taken out of the block and go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1336 will be removed from the block and go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1343, Senate Bill 1347, Senate Bill 1349, Senate Bill 1366, Senate Bill 1417, Senate Bill 1457, Senate Bill 1461.
Mr. President.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Serville.
Can Senate Bill 1457 come out of the block just so I can vote against it?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1457 will come out of the block.
Senate Bill 1461, Senate Bill 1464, Senate Bill 1499, Senate Bill 1543, Senate Bill 1545, Senate Bill 1557, Senate Bill 1586, Senate Bill 1591, Senate Bill 1619, Senate Bill 1632, Senate Bill 1677, Senate Bill 1684, Senate Bill 1686, Senate Bill 1690, Senate Bill 1694, Senate Bill 1724, Senate Bill 1746.
The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is all bills except for Senate Bills 1594, 1336, and 1457. All in favor of passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The bills in the block pass.
Returning to page 8, Senate Bill 1457.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass and speaking to that motion.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill streamlines portions of the deposition process that apply to senior executives and corporations, and I would ask that the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1457? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1457 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 5.
Ayes 33, noes 5. Senate Bill 1457 passes.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 1098, a bill relating to Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity definitions, small business.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to yield to my good friend, the senior senator from Chesapeake.
Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the gentleman. Senate Bill 1098 is well-intentioned, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, but in meeting with several groups of small business people, especially on the contractor side, they've expressed concern about the way, a couple of things, the ways the bill is drafted, whether it's the number of people that defines a small business, if it's the gross annual income that defines a small business, whether the gross receipt should go through or not is a concern to them. I've spoken with the patron, and I'm making a motion that this bill go back to general laws to see if we can't get it right.
Thanks, Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill shall Senate Bill 1098 be re-referred to the Committee on General Laws and Technology? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 1098 is re-referred to committee.
A bill relating to apprenticeships, ratio of apprentices to journeymen.
Mr. President, can that bill go by for the day?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1169 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1715, a bill relating to sales and use tax exemption, Menstrual Supplies Dignity Act.
Senator from Northwestern Fairfax, Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, SB 1715 adds menstrual supplies to the list of miscellaneous exemptions to the retail, sales, and use tax. I move that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1715? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1715 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 1715 passes.
Senate Bill 1207, a bill relating to school protection officers' minimum training standards exemption.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill pass and speaking to that.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Senate Bill 1207 essentially allows us to give DCJS the authority to adopt different standards for school protection officer, and those would particularly be for the younger children in campus safety, school safety, the things that we're trying to accomplish to protect these children. It's just another way to help provide an officer in there to make sure these children are safe in their days at school. I'd ask the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. With apologies to the patron, I rise to speak against the bill, mainly because we already have in Virginia law school resource officers and school security officers who are pretty well defined. There is a process going on right now at DCJS to revise and expand on the training for school resource officers, and creating a third category of law enforcement in our schools without any parameters over what that training should be at this point could be a little confusing. And I understand the need to focus on school safety, but we need to be careful not to so harden the school that we're not focusing on some of the underlying issues in that school. And there are some areas where there is a little bit of tension already with school resource officers. We don't want to add to the confusion there. And I don't believe this was a recommendation of the School Safety Task Force. I think if we're going to create a third level of law enforcement in our schools, I think we as a General Assembly should put a little more parameters and explain the differences between this new category, school resource officers, and school security officers. Thank you.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1207? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1207 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 27, noes 13.
Ayes 27, noes 13. Senate Bill 1207 passes.
Senate Bill 1342, a bill relating to garage and mechanics liens, amount of lien.
Junior Senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Stout.
Good afternoon, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Senate Bill 1342 is about storage and mechanics liens. And the easiest way to explain this is basically if you're a mechanic and somebody comes in and requests to have $5,000 worth of repair done to your vehicle, today the mechanics lien only covers the first $1,000. So if there's a lien and they do that much work, they only get up to $1,000. What this bill does is if there's a loan on the car, it goes up to the first $1,000 goes to the mechanic. Then the rest of it to satisfy that lien goes to the bank or the credit union. And then any remaining would, under this bill, go back to the mechanic to cover their costs. If there is no lien on it, what this bill does is the mechanics can go over that $1,000. They can go up to the value of the vehicle. So with that explanation, Mr. President, I request this bill pass.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1342? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1342 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. Senate Bill 1342 passes.
Senate Bill 1452, a bill relating to dispensing certain drugs and devices, limited license.
Mr. President, if I may,
Senator
having
Henrico,
spoken to
Senator
the patron, thank you. Having spoken to the patron, we would like to get some more specifics on these regulations. We've had a little conversation ongoing in committee, and I would request that Senate Bill 1452 be re-referred back to Education and Health.
Mr. President.
Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have spoken with the senator from Henrico and am fine with that motion and would encourage the body to vote in favor of the motion so that we can clear up some of the confusion around what this limited license would look like.
Thank the senators. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1452 be recommitted to the Committee on Education and Health? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is recommitted to the Committee on Education and Health.
Senate Bill 1486, a bill relating to summary judgment, limited use of discovery depositions and affidavits.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. And speaking of the bill,
Senator,
since nobody knows what this bill is about, I will. This is the summary judgment bill that we discussed at great length yesterday. I won't belabor the bill. 49 other states provide for broad summary judgment. This is not going to tilt the world off of its axis. It is not a novel concept. It goes just barely up the path that the federal rules have gone. This is dipping our big toe into the field of summary judgments in a limited way, notwithstanding the reticence of some of my brethren and sistren to adopt this. I respectfully submit that it makes good sense and will provide important economies for litigants.
I thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speaking to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, I didn't speak on the amendments yesterday, but I felt compelled to stand up and speak on this grand deal today. And so, the chairman of courts did. He instructed the Chamber of Commerce and trial lawyers to work out a deal to try to accomplish tort reform. And so I just want to make sure everybody in here understands what tort reform is. Tort reform is trying to curb the flow of litigation regarding slip and fall, personal injury cases, somebody getting rear-ended in a car, or accident cases, products liability cases. It's consumer litigation. So it's when I have an issue as an individual, I sue a business. And the interesting thing about this is there's no tort reform in this grand deal, because what happened was that got accepted out of the bill. And so you can't have a motion, you can't use the depositions or affidavits in a motion for summary judgment in consumer litigation, slip and fall, personal injury, products liability, which is really what the businesses want to try to deal with, because in many cases it can be crippling to them. They exempted all that out, and now it's just business-to-business litigation. So it's two businesses who have an issue. The general thing that bugs me about this is I guess the fundamental thing of our judicial system is you should be able to have your day in court. And all of us are involved in electing judges, and all of us talk to judges, and that's probably one of the things we discuss with them the most. We want people to have their day in court. We want them to be heard, to feel like you've listened to what they had to say, to give them the opportunity and the time to make their case. We don't tell them how to rule on stuff. That's not our purview. But we want people to have their day in court and to have a fair trial and to be heard. Despite the fact that this has nothing to do with tort reform, it short-circuits litigation. And that's my general objection to this. We want to give people the opportunity to have their day in court and not to try to short-circuit this litigation. And I hope you all will vote against this bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not going to trespass on the time other than to say I think that was a great speech. Anytime I hear the words 49 states, I know it's a bad idea, okay? Bottom line is we have a very good civil justice system in Virginia. Very good. People come to this state and litigate because, you know what, it's efficient, it's cost efficient, and we have the best judges. So why, and lawyers, so why do we feel the need we got to copy everybody else by adopting a resolution that was put together by two lobbyists, and now so they can go back and talk to their membership and say what a great job they did, we're going to bind 8 million people based on that quote-unquote deal. So I would like to thank my colleague from King George. He's an absolutely impeccable attorney and a good person, and I concur wholeheartedly. Thank you.
There you go. For what purpose is the senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
speak in favor of the bill. And,
Senator has the floor.
We pretty thoroughly vetted it yesterday, and I don't think it's just a question of some high-paid Brooks Brothers suit lobbyist having worked this out, that there have been quite a few individuals that have been involved in the discussion of this, and I think it is commendable that they have been able to reach a compromise, and that compromise, being more than commendable, is going to save this body an enormous amount of time, speaking of efficiency. Second thing I would say is I would remind you what the Senator and Chairman of the Courts Committee explained to you yesterday, what the standard is in the proceedings in order for a motion for summary judgment to be granted, and it's basically that no reasonable person could find, based upon the factual circumstances in the law, that the case ought to go forward. So, Mr. President, you being probably an extraordinary lawyer, at least by reputation, I would say that this is not depriving party litigants of their day in court. Sometimes you just lose, Mr. President. Sometimes you just lose a case. And you talk about expediency and taking away a day in court, both in civil procedure and criminal procedure. Every attorney in this body knows that there are preemptive motions that can be made, and those preemptive motions frequently are based upon the quality or the lack of quality of evidence. So it is not a question of taking away the opportunity for a party litigant to have their day in court. They just don't have the facts of the law on their side in the case, and they're winners and they're losers. And that doesn't mean that you're losing your day in court.
I thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin, rise?
Speak in favor of the bill.
The senator has the floor.
So, you know, I've heard the debate, and I certainly we've got a lot of smart lawyers here and smart people here, but this just proves one thing. Smart lawyers don't often agree on a lot, okay? And I will tell you, beyond that, I am a member of the chamber and also a member of the VTLA, have been for many years. This is not about big business any more than it's about little business. But I tell you what this bill is about. This bill is about crummy cases, okay? It's about having cases, getting cases that don't have a lot of merit, and they're going to go down before the trial. They're going to go out on a summary judgment motion, just like they do in federal court, just like they do in Tennessee, just like they do in North Carolina, just like they do in West Virginia, just like they do all around the country, okay? They're not going to hang around and somebody be able to extract some kind of settlement out of it, a nominal settlement out of it. They're going to go down if we pass this bill. So a lot of this frivolous litigation is going to go bye-bye, and it's going to go bye-bye quick. So I got to recommend to the body, pass this bill and let some of that junk go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm reading this, and I was undecided before. And I said, well, this is a lawyer's bill. And I said, who do I trust? I said, I trust Senator Norman because he didn't vote, that he spoke. Now today, I'm saying, why should I sit here and vote on a lawyer's bill? So if there's anybody, well, I won't call on John Collins on that side, but anybody who's not a lawyer, just tell me how to vote. Anybody who's not a lawyer.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black, rise?
I ask if the gentleman from Fairfax City would rise for a question.
Will the senator rise for a question?
I would yield.
It was. Senator has the floor.
The other day, I listened closely to your comments about this, and you had mentioned situations where perhaps there would be a large volume of interrogatories and so forth that would bog down a plaintiff. And I asked the question whether it would not be ordinary in the process of a case for the judge to issue an order that would restrict the the number of interrogatories, the extent of depositions and so forth.
Right.
Determined based on the nature of the case. I mean, if we're talking about the IBM litigation, that's one thing. But if we're talking about some mom and pop dispute, wouldn't it be common for the judge to issue guidance as to limitations on discovery?
Senator has the floor.
Well, I thank the gentleman for the question. The short answer is a trial judge can always shorten discovery, but under Virginia Circuit Court rules, you have the right to take discovery, you have the right to take depositions, and that's where this bill becomes expensive. And with apologies, I am a licensed attorney, but with my colleague who asked questions about it, one of the things that makes this bill so expensive to litigants is right now, if I have a trial, I can go out and interview witnesses, take notes, bring them to trial, and put on my case. Once somebody moves for summary judgment, that testimony has to be recorded by deposition. And both sides will use deposition testimony, and that then becomes the expense of the case, which will take a case that I could try for, say, $10,000, now it becomes $25,000. $25,000 now becomes $60,000 because all of the depositions, which I have to use either to win or lose the case at summary judgment, I have to do that in addition to trying the case. It's almost as if I have to try the case twice, and that's what becomes expensive. Not for me. I'm getting paid. It becomes expensive for my client.
I thank the gentleman, and speaking to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I understand what the gentleman had said. However, it's been many years, but I did some civil law back in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, and if you had a frivolous case, your plaintiff could have a couple of depositions, submit some interrogatories, requests for admissions, and so forth. And at that point, if there was no evidence that could reasonably be expected to establish a cause of action, then the defendant could simply draft up a motion to dismiss on summary judgment, and the court would hold a hearing, and if there was no evidence, case was gone. And so for that reason, I understand. I mean, there are situations, I'm sure, where there are exceptions, but I just have a feeling that in the scheme of things, we're actually going to be able to use this bill to clear out a lot of these frivolous cases and make the system move a little bit better. I finished with your question. I'm sorry. I should have made it a little more clear. I actually said that when I stood up, so I apologize to the gentleman. But anyway, I do encourage you to support the measure.
Thanks, Senator. For what purpose does the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, if no one else wishes to speak about this bill.
We have one more, Senator, if you don't mind.
I will yield.
I'll thank the Senator. Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville, for what purpose does the Senator rise?
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple points here. First of all, I know there's a big effort here on the other side to try and minimize this, but there might be 49 other states that have this, but in 49 other states, they don't limit it to one little teeny tiny or one class of cases, right? It applies to everyone. In addition, in those other states where they have this, they have a right to an appeal. So that if a judge makes a mistake, you have the right to have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people look at it to make sure you didn't get rooked by some judge that's got an issue. And we put these people on the bench, and some of them, don't always make the right decisions. And some of them make mistakes. Some of them do it intentionally. For the most part, they do a good job. But sometimes they just don't like who's in front of them, and they make a decision, and they get it wrong. And in Virginia, you don't have a right to an appeal. You have a right to request an appeal, and we have a Supreme Court that has now taken their docket down to the lowest number it's ever been in probably the history of the court, or at least in modern history, according to the stats I've seen. So you don't have a right to meaningful review in this state if a judge wants to just throw a case out because he doesn't like your case. So Virginia is different. And there's a lot of other pieces that fit into this. These are complex issues. They're not just simple little tiny fixes and this isn't a big deal. These issues are never that way. They never are. And, the reason you hear a lot of us standing up here, we're not arguing because it's going to hurt our practice or our income. This is going to be great for business. This is going to allow us to charge an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a case to prep a summary judgment motion, to load up a bunch of depositions, to stack 10,000 pages of junk in front of a judge. And you know who's going to pay it? Our clients. It's going to drive up the cost of business. It's going to drive up the cost of litigation. It's going to make our courts have to spend more time on this. It's going to have the circuit courts back here next year or the year after saying we need law clerks. We can't handle all this volume, especially in some parts of the state where we have some big business disputes. In Northern Virginia, we'll have commercial cases like this go to trial for like weeks and weeks. And so they're going to be filing motions that could fit up 2 desks here. And who's going to read all that stuff? The judge ain't going to read it. They're going to need people to read it, tell them what to do. So there are consequences down the road. And normally when we do something that's this significant, it goes through something like Boyd Graves. It gets vetted more heavily. This hasn't been vetted by anybody outside this body. And it needs to be looked at. And just the last thing I'll say, Mr. President, is I really do think there are constitutional issues with this. Justice McCullough, who we put on the Supreme Court 2 years ago, wrote a column about how Virginia's Declaration of Rights has an independent vitality from the U.S. Bill of Rights because it existed 12 years before we adopted the Bill of Rights. And some people think it has a broader applicability than the U.S. Bill of Rights. And our Bill of Rights says you have a constitutional right to a jury trial, and that right is sacred. It doesn't appear anywhere else in the U.S. Constitution, the Constitution of Virginia, that appears in one place, and it's the right of trial by jury. And it was because they felt very strongly one of the innovations of this democracy, of this state, before the United States of America even existed, one of the innovations we did that nobody else in the world had ever done is put a body of our peers between people in disputes. And that was important because of the experience that they went through as a colony. And I think we ought to honor that tradition and that value, and we ought to kill this bill.
Thank the Senator. Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I rise to speak in favor of the bill and maybe put some people's minds at ease. I am afraid the senator from Chesapeake, I cannot stand up here and tell you that I am not a lawyer, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express sometime over the past year. So, first of all, let me tell you, this is tort reform. It does address torts. There are business torts. This includes business torts. It is a very narrow change to the law. It deals with every case involving business-to-business litigation. Second, everyone gets their day in court. Everyone has an opportunity to establish the evidence to try and prove their case. Everyone gets an opportunity to be heard by a judge. A judge will look at the evidence and will decide every one of these cases. Every single one of these cases is going to be subject to appellate review, which already happens in every case in which one party or the other tries to appeal to the Supreme Court. A panel at a minimum of 3 judges evaluates that case and decides whether or not a full-blown appeal is going to take place. This does not create summary judgment. Summary judgment is simply a rule that allows a court to dismiss a case upon which there are not enough facts to support that case. We already have summary judgment in Virginia. Courts can enter summary judgment on the basis of interrogatories or documents that have been produced or admissions that have been made through pleadings. All this does is says that if a witness or witnesses have given testimony under oath, if they have testified under oath and that testimony establishes that one side should win, and that reasonable minds could not possibly find in favor of the other side, the court can enter summary judgment in the case, just like the court can already do, except they can consider sworn testimony in support of that motion. It does not require my friend from Fairfax City to go out there and spend his client's money taking depositions that he would not otherwise take. Because if somebody files a motion for summary judgment against his client, uses a deposition to support that summary judgment motion, and he didn't want to take a deposition of one of his witnesses, he can simply prepare and submit an affidavit to support his position that summary judgment should not be granted. As I said before, this is not earth-shattering. This will not change Western civilization. This modifies our existing rule on summary judgment in a very limited fashion, and it is not unconstitutional. I admire my friend from Eastern Fairfax and his creativity in looking at the Virginia Constitution. However, we have always had summary judgment in Virginia, and this does not modify or alter that. So with that, I would ask that this bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall Senate Bill 1486 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 17.
Ayes 22, noes 17. Senate Bill 1486 passes.
Senate Bill 1507, a bill relating to use of unmanned aircraft systems by law enforcement officers, persons sought for arrest.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill passed. Speaking to the bill.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, this is a slight change to tort reform. No, I'm just kidding. This is this is language, Mr. President, added to the section of the code dealing with unmanned aircraft system used by law enforcement officers. This section of the code and this change to the code just allows law enforcement officers, when they're doing aerial or when they have a warrant for a subject, to do an aerial survey of the primary residence of that individual that they have the warrant for, in order for them to plan how to go in much parts of the area which I represent. There's always a saying in military, if you have the high ground, you have the advantage. So in a lot of those areas in which law enforcement goes in the areas that I live, a lot of these homes are on mountains, and you have to drive up through the valley. And this gives law enforcement the ability for their safety to be able to fly, to see the primary residence, to see how they can execute that search warrant, and also gives them the ability under this section, if they're in hot pursuit of an individual that they have a warrant for, to be able to use that aerial system in order for their safety to prevent anything from happening. So I hope it'd be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise?
Gentleman, yield for a question.
Will Senator yield?
I'll yield.
You have the floor.
All right. Just so I understand, I'd ask the gentleman, so this is going into the code which is talking about a warrantless search, correct?
Correct.
So basically what we're allowing here is you could put a drone up over somebody's property without a warrant and use that observation to essentially search their property without going and obtaining a warrant from a magistrate.
But there has to be a warrant for the individual that they're searching.
Further question?
Further question.
Further question?
All right. Well, how do you know if the individual has multiple residences? Do you get to apply this to every residence or potential place where they might be?
Senator's floor.
Mr. President, that was the reasoning for putting primary residence in which they believe that the individual is at.
All right. I thank you, gentlemen.
Senator, do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1507? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1507 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 28, noes 12.
Ayes 28, noes 12. Senate Bill 1507 passes. Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side by which Senate Bill 1457 on page 8 passed, I move that we can reconsider that vote.
Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1457 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for a little refresher, what this bill does is it streamlines the process for depositions of corporate officers, makes it a little simpler and less onerous. And with that, I would ask that the members of the body please pass the bill.
Mr. President.
Senate Bill 1457 on page 8. We'll get the right one up. No, we'll get it up. All right.
Gentlelady yield for a question.
Will the senator yield for a question?
They're telling me to say no, but I'm so gracious. I welcome as many questions as you'd like to ask.
Is this the type of deposition to be used in a motion for summary judgment?
I'm going to sit down.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1457 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 5.
Ayes 35, noes 5. Senate Bill 1457 passes.
Mr. President?
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben.
On page 17, having voted on the prevailing side by which we passed SB 1486, I move the vote be reconsidered so a member can cast their vote.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 1486 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I have another 2 pages of notes about this. I move that the bill pass, having previously been explained.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson, rise? Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1486 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 17.
Ayes 23, no 17. Senate Bill 1486 passes.
Senate Bill 1560, a bill relating to local regulation of parking of certain vehicles.
Senator from Accomack, Senator Lewis.
Mr. President, move the bill pass and speaking to the motion.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Right. Mr. President, members of the Senate, Senate Bill 1560 is a simple measure on which mercifully neither the trial lawyers nor the chamber have indicated a position. It comes to me at the request of the town of Cape Charles. Cape Charles, if you haven't had the opportunity to visit, and I encourage you to do so, is a booming little town now. And during the summer times, its streets, which are very narrow, are replete with people parking their boats there for long periods of time and blocking the streets. So this is a safety measure. And so what we seek to do is add to 46.2-1222.1 the town of Cape Charles to several other localities and towns which already have the right and the ability to regulate and prohibit the parking of watercraft, trailers, motorhomes on their streets. And I would point out, Mr. Chairman, I do not think, contrary to what the calendar indicates, while there were some abstentions in committee, I do not believe that that many people own property in Cape Charles or are parking their boat trailers there on the streets. So with that, I move that the bill pass, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1560? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1560 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. Senate Bill 1560 passes.
Senate Bill 1578, a bill relating to reckless driving exceeding speed limit.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 1578 be passed by the Senate. And speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1578 is a bill that we have now passed out of this chamber on a bipartisan vote several years in a row. Unfortunately, there's a small group on the other end of the Capitol that's not enthusiastic about it. What this bill does is it says that the mandatory automatic speeding threshold of reckless driving will move from 80 up to 85 miles an hour. This is significant because the speed limit on several interstates is now 70 miles an hour. So you have situations where people that are going between 11 and 15 miles over the speed limit can be charged with reckless driving. And in most situations, there's a lot of attorneys excited about it, I know. In most situations, you can go and you can have it reduced. But when you're facing a Class 1 misdemeanor, which is what the Virginia statute on reckless driving is, you are going to court with facing the possibility of up to a year in jail and or a $2,500 fine. And I hear from folks that say, well, that's not what it ought to be. I agree. We should not have laws on the book that we don't actually intend to enforce with the penalties that are attached to them. And so I hope it'll be the pleasure of the body to fix this situation, just as we've aimed to every year for the last several on a bipartisan basis.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1578? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1578 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 5.
Ayes 35, noes 5. Senate Bill 1578 passes.
Senate Bill 1629, a bill relating to local school boards lead testing report.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you might recall, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, several years ago we passed a law for the collection and testing of lead water in our schools. This is a provision that has those reports submitted to the Office of Water Quality with the Virginia Department of Health. What this will do is actually help them to apply for grants to actually provide funding for our schools. So there's some opportunities if we actually had the data. You might have seen reports over the last couple of years since schools began testing that, guess what, we actually have a problem. And many schools have come back 5, 10, 25 times limits that are allowable under federal law. And so school systems are working to correct this, but by sending the information to the Office of Water Quality, this will actually enable us to apply for additional federal grants and help to fund some of these issues that we found. So, Mr. President, with that, I ask that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1629? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1629 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 1.
Ayes 39, noes 1. Senate Bill 1629 passes.
Senate Bill 1710, a bill relating to community work in lieu of payment of fines and court cost authority of the court.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill pass. Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this bill was brought to my attention that some courts are not basically following or monitoring the occasions when the judge defers the fines and oversees the community services, the work that the individual is supposed to be doing for a period of 10 years. basically, it's just clarifying language that it's the duty of the court to oversee that. And it would give them a period of 10 years to monitor that to make sure that they honor that commitment that the court had them to look to do in lieu of the fine. And I hope it would be the pleasure of the body to pass the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1710? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1710 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 2.
Ayes 38, noes 2. Senate Bill 1710 passes.
Senate Bill 1719, a bill relating to cannabidiol oil and THCA oil registered agent pharmaceutical processors.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill.
Thank the Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may be aware, a 5-year effort to make non-psychoactive cannabidiol and THCA oils available that started out with an effort for kids with intractable epilepsy. And thanks to the help from my friend, the senator from Enrico, Senator Donovan, which has now made this available to anyone that a doctor can recommend it for here in the Commonwealth who has a condition that they think can help with it. We have issued 5 licenses to processors to process or to grow, process, and distribute these pharmaceuticals to people who have had it recommended by physicians. And what this bill does, Mr. President, I sat down with the folks who won these licenses, people who are experienced in the business, to try to streamline the business, get the costs down, make it efficient, make it work well. And so this bill does 4 things. It creates the authorizes a patient to have a registered agent to receive these drugs from the processor. In other words, many of these individuals would be developmentally delayed or have a physical disability that they just won't be able to answer the door. They'll be there with a care worker and to allow the care worker to receive this product. The second thing we did is that we created some more flexibility in hiring so that we could hire people from here in the state of Virginia, because we don't have people with 2 years of experience, but they will be hired and working under people who do have experience under direct supervision. And because when these businesses start out, there will be some shortages of supply. It allows them to transfer these oils under current regulations back and forth to make sure that patients get the pharmaceuticals that they need. And lastly, it just makes clear that after you're issued your permit to open, you can then plant your crop. It gives enough time to get that ready so that, because it does take a while to get the crop ready for processing. So that's what the bill does. I want to thank this chamber for all their help over these many years getting this to this point, and I would ask again that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1719? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1719 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, noes 0.
Ayes 39, noes 0. Senate Bill 1719 passes.
Senate Bill 1727, a bill relating to purchase, possession, and sale of tobacco products, nicotine vapor products, and alternative nicotine products, minimum age requirements penalty.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
My good friend, the senior senator from Virginia Beach, is trying to do a Nicorette advertisement before I speak on this bill, and such as it is. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is a bill that makes a fairly modest but significant change. Basically, what it says is that we're going to raise the legal age for the purchase of any tobacco-related products from 18 to 21. The amendment in the nature of a substitute that was adopted in committee added on a military exemption. Those who are on active duty in the military with a ID can continue to purchase cigarette-related products. This bill came about as a result of the transformation that's taking place within the tobacco industry, and it is a moving in that direction as they're transforming their business. The only objection that really was raised during the committee process came from the vaping community, and I listened with interest. And obviously, I'm not particularly well informed about this, but I found that the vaping products were helping people move away from being addicted to nicotine, and actually they had a therapeutic component. So it's remarkable what you can learn through this legislative process. I would say that following the committee meeting and the reporting of this amendment and its substitute, the vaping community did come to me and offer an amendment that would exempt vaping products from elevating the legal age from 18 to 21 if you were born before a certain date. I appreciated their reaching out to me, but I respectfully declined to embrace that amendment. So I would ask that the body support raising the legal age from 18 to 21 for the purchase of any tobacco-related products.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben, rise?
To speak in support of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
I want to thank the senator from James City County for bringing this legislation. And I also wanted to mention how important it is that it includes e-cigarettes. Nicotine, which is the dangerous component of e-cigarettes, has effects on learning, memory, and brain plasticity, which is later in life development. And the brain imaging studies of adolescents who began smoking or vaping at a young age showed noticeably reduced development in the part of the brain responsible for a person's cognitive behavior and decision-making, leading to increased sensitivity to other drugs and greater impulsivity. And it is particularly important that it does include vaping because the products, although we hear from some people that they help move some away from addiction, the levels of nicotine in the vaping products are really addictive, and what they're really doing is hurting our young people because they're taking young people who've never smoked and making it very common. We know that one product called Juuls specifically contains high levels of benzoic acid known to cause coughs, sore throat, abdominal pain, nausea, and vomiting if exposure is constant, which is the case when using one. The teens are vulnerable to long-term addiction, and unpublished federal data shows a 77% increase in e-cigarette use among high school students. And if you talk to any student in a high school in Virginia or elsewhere, they'll tell you that these products are there. And there are people who have other products available to them. They've got the patch, they've got the gum if they're really trying to quit. So with that, I thank the gentleman for bringing the bill forward.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator D. Steph, rise?
Mr. President, will the patron raise for a question?
Will the patron rise for a question?
Yes, sir.
Senator Will, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I was just wondering the effects on the military, those who are serving overseas and guarding our country.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I would respond as the bill was originally introduced, it did not contain an exemption for the active duty military individuals. We subsequently offered an amendment, hence the amendment in the nature of the substitute that is currently before the body. And if you're active duty military with a military ID, you can continue to purchase tobacco-related products even though you may be 18, 19, or 20.
Mr. President, I thank the gentleman for his answer.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the patron rise for a question, please?
Will the patron rise for another question?
It was with great trepidation that I yield for a question.
Thank you. I noticed
the floor.
I notice we keep hiding behind the military, something military, we just give it in to them. What about a person who had a stressful job, let's say a 20-year-old who was an apprentice for a mortician job? I noticed, I was told by some morticians, Kenny, for example, at 20 years old, because of the nature of the job, they go outside for some reason. That relief them. We're talking about 20-year-old. I can see that we're getting after the high school, but are we saying that those who are firemen or 20 years old, a mortician 20 years old, are you saying that they also cannot have a cigarette?
Senator has the floor.
I thank the gentleman and my friend for the question. I would say that there would be a prohibition for anyone under the age of 21 to purchase any tobacco-related product. Now, I would say there are two options. One, I will be happy to give you the senior senator from Virginia Beach's address so that they can contact him for some of that Nicorette that he carries with him. Or secondly, if you really want to be progressive, Mr. President, I would say that there is the opportunity to vote for a decriminalization of marijuana that truly would allow them to relax a little bit.
Mr. President, second question.
Further question? Senator Yield for a second question?
I do, sir.
Senator Yields.
Then what's so special about an 18-year-old in the military? They all are not stressful jobs. So what's so special about an 18-year-old in the military that you allow him to speak, to smoke cigarettes?
Mr. President, I'd say that's a very fair question. If, in fact, an individual is active duty military with a legitimate military ID, and if they're 18, 19, or 20, they may purchase and use tobacco-related products. There are no restrictions or constraints within this bill that would require that to take place just on a military base or a military facility. So if they had a second job, they would lawfully be in possession of a tobacco product and could, in fact, consume it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose is the senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards, rise?
Senator from James City County, yield for a question.
Will Senator yield for a question?
I will yield, sir.
Senator Yields, you have the floor.
Is it true that this bill just raises the minimum age for purchasing cigarettes from 18 to 21, but that it's still legal for anyone to smoke a cigarette?
Senator has the floor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1727? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1727 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 32, noes 8.
Ayes 32, noes 8. Senate Bill 1727 passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the second reading on the uncontested calendar be advanced to their engrossment and passage on the third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments. That would include all Senate bills on pages 20 through 28, including Senate Bill 1077 through Senate Bill 1777. Any senator who desires to remove a bill from the block should please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 20 through 28, Senate Bill 1077 through Senate Bill 1777, be engrossed in advance to the third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments thereto, and that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1077, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe.
Thank you. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1083, reported from the Committee on Finance with a substitute, and we have floor amendments.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute be accepted.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Mr. President, I would waive the reading of the floor amendment.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment will allow the marketplace facilitators to ask for the tax department for up to 3-month delay to make needed company changes. And I would move that.
Thank you, Senator. Question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted.
Senate Bill 1135, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1224, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
I thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1256, reported from the Committee on Finance. Senate Bill 1271, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendments.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the amendments be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1328, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with amendments.
Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 1388, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 1409, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd move that the substitute be adopted.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 1410, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move the substitute be adopted.
I thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 1414, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 1416, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 1427, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 1436, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1462, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Mr. President.
Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Without adopting the committee substitute, can Senate Bill 1462 go by for the day, please?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1462 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1490, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1516, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1599, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Senate Bill 1692, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1720, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services. Senate Bill 1725, reported from the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources with a substitute, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, I'll yield to the gentleman from Spotsylvania, and I'd like to address his amendment at the appropriate time.
Thank the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
1 second, Senator.
Well, I'll go ahead and move that the committee substitute be adopted.
Mr. President, speaking to the adoption of the committee substitute.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the body, I would ask that we would reject the committee substitute so we can get to the floor substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I hope we would resist that motion, and I guess I'm going to have to explain a little bit of this bill.
Senator, the floor.
Discuss that. What this bill is about is providing a safe distance from the shore to people who are putting up duck blinds and floating blinds. And so what we came up with was putting those duck blinds about 150 yards away from the shore. And honestly, the reason I came up with 150 yards is because I wouldn't want you shooting at me with steel shot at a distance any less than 150 yards. The gentleman from Spotsylvania has a constituent apparently who has an issue with that, and I was happy to try to work out a yardage or something, but what the senator from Spotsylvania is asking us to consider is an amendment that would exclude Fairfax County, Prince William County, and Stafford County from that. Now, I would suggest that those are the some of the most populated areas in the whole state. And that's why we need to keep a gun 150 yards away from the people who are on the shore. And so I hope you all would reject the floor substitute and adopt the committee substitute. I guess the motion remains to adopt the committee substitute.
That is the pending motion.
Mr. President.
Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Will the senator from Stafford rise for a question?
Senator rise for a question.
I'll be happy to rise.
Senator will rise. You have the floor.
Mr. President, would the senator, is he aware that by passing this legislation, there already exists in the code for Fairfax, Prince William, and Stafford, they've already set their own rules of a distance from a blind to the shore that would specifically be contrary to this bill, and that they provide that a blind must be located within 300 yards?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, if the locality has a more strict ordinance given authority by the General Assembly, it would not conflict with this. They would be able to maintain it. If you were to adopt his floor substitute, I think it would then supersede the county's ordinances and could cause some difficulties with them.
Mr. President, will the gentleman yield for a second question?
Further questions?
I'm happy to yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Would the gentleman, after reading the floor amendment, since he mentioned my floor amendment, agree that the floor amendment would allow private landowners the opportunity to choose whether or not they wanted somebody shooting off their shoreline?
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, that pretty much goes to the heart of the bill. And so the issue that we have is, and we've been seeing it more and more recently, and I have to explain the whole bill. Under the law right now, you could put what's called a keep-away blind off of your shore. And if you do that, you only have to have the intent to hunt it. You don't have to hunt it. You just have to intend to. People have to stay 500 yards away from that blind. And that's the laws that exist in Virginia today. If you fail to put up that blind or keep-away blind or whatever you want to call it, then a non-riparian owner can come in and they can erect a blind or a stake for a floating blind. The issue that we're finding is people are coming and they're putting that stake or the floating blind right by somebody's house on the water. And so people then are out there shooting on the weekends or during the week, and the people who own the property are afraid they're going to get shot. We call these offshore blinds in the code. And so it makes sense that we move them offshore. That's what we're trying to do here. I'm trying to actually eliminate conflict between hunters and the people on the shore. And again, the 150 yards really comes out of thin air because I would not want anybody shooting at me with steel shot any closer than 150 yards. It's not like lead shot. It doesn't flatten out. Steel remains small, and it will penetrate at long distances, unlike lead. This is just a safety measure trying to eliminate conflict between hunters and the riparian owners, and actually think it may increase the ability for people to hunt because it seeks to get you to go ask permission to hunt rather than just coming in and trying to put up something surreptitiously. That's more of an explanation than I wanted to give, but I think it fully explains the bill.
Senator,
Mr. President.
Senator from Spotsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield for another question?
Will Senator yield for another question?
I will yield.
Senator yields. You have the floor.
Will the senator explain to me in what code section it deals with floating blinds?
Senator's floor.
I can't tell him, Mr. President, the code section that deals with floating blinds, but in Virginia we have two blinds. We have an offshore blind stake, which deals with floating blinds, and so you must go put a stake in the ground or in the water, and your boat must be within so many feet of that when you hunt, and I think it's got to be tied to it or it's got to be within so many feet. And then you can erect a stationary blind. We only have two choices in Virginia. Either of those are covered under the bill, and the idea is to get them 150 feet away from shore so we don't have conflict between the people on the shore and the people in the blind.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rather than take all the body's time today, I would disagree with the senator from Stafford and ask him to show me in the code section 29.1.344 that supposedly covers floating blinds, which I don't think this bill and his substitute does. Also, if the senator would yield and ask me why in the substitute he has carved out specifically Virginia Beach.
Mr. President.
Question.
One second before we get to Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sorville.
Somebody represents about 500 houses in 50 miles of Potomac shoreline affected by this who didn't even realize this is on the docket or have anybody talked about it today. Could you take this by for the day so I can figure this out?
I'd rather not. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Well, there's a pending motion on the substitute. Does the senator want to renew that motion or withdraw it?
No, I'm not going to withdraw the motion. I'd like to go ahead and proceed on to adopt the committee substitute. I'm happy to talk with the senator, and if there's a way we can work an issue that he's concerned about, I'm happy to do it. To adopt the substitute. The committee
That's the motion
substitute.
on the floor.
I'll sit down for a second.
Okay. For what purpose does the senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase, rise? Oh, okay. It's phoned in there. Does Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves, wish to be heard before we take a vote?
No, Mr. President. I would just tell the body that the floor substitute, if we could get to it, I could probably explain it pretty well for the senators from Fairfax and their concerns and address some of those.
Mr. President. Mr. President, substitute motion.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Sorville.
Substitute motion, take this by for the day, which I think has precedence over a motion to adopt a substitute.
Mr. President, I'll withdraw my motion.
Senator withdraws his motion. Senator, motion still stands. You want to renew that motion?
Yeah, I really need to look at this carefully. Take this by for the day.
Okay. Without objection, Senate Bill 1725 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1777, reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, may this go by for the day because I'm not sure whether DOC wanted to offer up another amendment or not.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1777 will go by for the day. Question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed in advance to their third reading? That is all bills except for 1462, 1725, and 1777. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed in advance to their third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 1173, a bill relating to the Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program, eligibility. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute, and reported from the Committee on Finance with an amendment.
Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is agreed to. Senator from Prince William, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move the amendment from the Committee on Finance be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to. Senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike.
Mr. President, I move the bill be engrossed in advance to its third read.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1326, a bill to require the State Board of Social Services to amend its regulations regarding bed limits for licensed assisted living facilities. Reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to. The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1786, a bill relating to conditional release of geriatric, terminally ill, or permanently physically disabled prisoners. Reported from the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services with a substitute.
The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
Mr. President, I would move that we adopt the substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw.
I would now move that the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now move all the Senate bills on the first reading on both the uncontested and regular calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 29 through 32, including Senate Bill 1307 through Senate Bill 1758, that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 29 through 32, Senate Bill 1307 through Senate Bill 1758 be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, no 0.
Ayes 40, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now move that all the bills be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Regular calendar, Senate Joint Resolutions on second reading. Senate Joint Resolution 283, proposing an amendment to Section 1 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia relating to qualifications of voters, restoration of civil rights. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections, and we have a floor amendment.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I ask that we waive the reading of the floor amendment, although I would like to read it. Anyway.
Question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of waiving the reading will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, what this does to this constitutional amendment is to make it more appropriate for being in a constitution as opposed to being in legislation. The idea is to take out that part of this constitutional amendment that really should be in legislation, if at all. I'm trying to find it. Got it here somewhere. Yeah, thanks. What it does is, after the word felony, just deletes the remainder of line 25 and all of lines 25 and 26 through the word conviction. So all it says is, and if I can find it, here it is. That's not it. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay. It says, however, the General Assembly may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person who has been convicted of a felony, period. The remainder of this, if anywhere, should be in legislation, not in the Constitution. Let me explain why. After the word felony, it says, not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime for the purposes of rights restoration, and who has completed service of his sentence and paid in full any restitution, fines, costs, and fees assessed against him as a result of his conviction. There are two parts of this. The first part has to do with putting in the Constitution that the felony is not designated by the General Assembly as a barrier crime for purposes of rights restoration. We have no such. The barrier crimes we have in the Code of Virginia, Mr. President, have to do with employment, not being able to, for example, work in a daycare center if you're convicted of certain kinds of felonies like assault and battery or something like that. That's in the code. We have a number of barrier crimes that apply into different categories: nursing homes, homes for the aged, children, and a bunch of other categories. And that's why they're there. It has nothing to do with restoring rights. It has nothing whatsoever to do with being able to vote. It simply has to do with employment. We have no other barrier crimes in the Code of Virginia. And so therefore, I don't even know why it's here. Now, at some point in the future, if the General Assembly wants to pass legislation saying a person shouldn't vote because of some other certain type of a felony, that's another matter to be decided by a future General Assembly, if at all. The second category, Mr. President, is that the person whose rights would otherwise be restored has completed his service of the sentence and paid in full any restitution, fines, costs, and fees assessed against him as a result of his conviction. Again, that can be put in legislation in the future. That is, should not be in the Constitution. Some people also would argue, perhaps correctly so, that that imposes in effect a poll tax against voting. And so, but if it's going to be a condition of restoring your rights for purposes of voting, then that would be in legislation for some future General Assembly to look at. So again, the only thing that should be in the Constitution would be, however, and this would be, it's already in the Constitution that the governor is the only person now that can restore rights for somebody who's been convicted of a felony and allow the person to vote, for example. But this would be in addition to the Constitution. The General Assembly would have the right to do the same thing, not in lieu of the governor's rights, but rather in addition to the governor's authority. And that is, again, however, the General Assembly may provide by general law for the restoration of civil rights for any person who has been convicted of a felony, period. That should be it. And the rest of it, dealing with barrier crimes, should be, if at all, in some future legislation, not in the Constitution. A Constitution is hard to amend, as we know. It has to be passed this year, have to have an election, and then it has to be passed again the following year, and then sent to the voters in the form of a referendum. But legislation, however, can be changed from year to year. and the details should be in legislation in the statute, not in the Constitution. So the first category, barrier crime, shouldn't be here in the Constitution, and the idea of having paying fines and so forth should be, if at all, in legislation and not in the form of in the Constitution. So with that, I ask that the amendment pass or be agreed to.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to the Senator's proposed amendment.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this debate about the restoration of rights has been going on for a number of years. Various legislative proposals have been presented and rejected by one body or the other. Clearly, the restoration of rights discussion was highlighted by a former governor whose name escapes me, but thought he had the unilateral executive ability to restore felony rights that ultimately the Virginia Supreme Court decided was an overreaching of the executive authority. I would suggest to you, as I listened to the gentleman's argument, he did make one cogent point, and that is, in fact, that if, in fact, we do not embed this in the constitutional provision that will be submitted to the people, and I understand that a majority of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia can decide whether or not they embrace the encompassing of those provisions or they're going to reject them. But it does, in fact, leave it up to the vagaries of a General Assembly. And I think we all know that we are in somewhat of a period of flux between who has the balance of legislative power. And clearly, I think on most occasions, there is a fairly clear demarcation between where the partisan perspectives fall on this issue. So I would suggest to you, Mr. President, and it's probably more of a philosophical position, that I don't think that someone who has been convicted of a felony should even have the opportunity of being considered to having their rights restored until they have completed all of their probation, till they have paid all of their restitution and complied with all the terms and conditions of their release based upon the conviction. And so I would encourage the body to reject the proposed amendment.
For what purpose does Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black, rise?
Speak against the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been here for 20 years now, and when I first came, we had a provision. We have a provision in the Constitution that allows the governor to consider requests for restoration of rights, and I thought that it worked very well for many years. Those individuals who sincerely wanted to recover all of their rights as citizens, despite their conviction and service of penalties for felonies, they could do that, and they would establish to the governor that they had gotten through that period, that they were now good citizens and so forth. But they had to establish it. They had lost it. They had given it up through their deliberate actions, and now they had to meet certain standards to recover. I had no problem with the governors, Democrat or Republican, who would consider those applications and would evaluate them. They approved some, they disapproved some. I suspect there were some they probably sent back and said, okay, you got to do a little bit more first. But then we began to liberalize. We began to say, well, you don't really have to do this, you don't have to do that. And finally, we got to the point where we said, you don't even have to apply for it. And there was a woman I worked very closely with. She was never a client. Her son really was the one. He was never a client, but I would talk with her, and I actually mentored her son a little bit. But he got himself in some very, very serious criminal trouble, and I always commiserated with her because she was a good woman. And she called me one day. She said, so delighted. She said, my son, who is incarcerated in one of our state prisons, got a very nice letter from the governor, and it said, congratulations, you're going to be added to the voters' rolls. She said, I was so pleased because he's still got several years to complete on his sentence. And I thought, good grief. You talk about an absolute collapse of the system. And unfortunately, I mean, her son got himself in some pretty serious stuff. This was not, stealing a piece of bubble gum. This was, in one case, jabbing a shiv into somebody and almost hitting the aorta. And so somehow, I got to tell you, when people go to the polls and vote, I'm not sure that I want to have people who are sitting behind bars voting. And what I see now, if we were taking away the governor's power, and I'm not sure whether we even have the power to do that, but I suspect we do constitutionally. But even if we were doing that and replacing it with this, it might be one thing. But what we're doing is we're saying, okay, the governor can continue to do what governors have done and have sometimes done very abusively, but now we're going to add to that. And we're going to have a whole new portal through which these guys can move. And I think we need to be restricting it. We do not need to have a government of, by, and for, and selected by felons. So I hope that you vote against this.
For what purpose is the senator from Arlington, Senator Volarized?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of the amendment.
Senator's floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know we all have very strong views on sort of crime and punishment and whose rights should be restored and when. But this amendment is merely removing language from a constitutional amendment. It doesn't mean we can't legislate the restoration of rights in some other manner through law. We're talking about what would be appropriate in our Constitution. And some of my friends on the other side of the aisle have frequently reminded us all about how sacrosanct our Constitution is, how we should not be amending it willy-nilly, how the Constitution should really try to survive the test of time. I would think that the language here we're talking about is really not necessary for the Constitution. And furthermore, the way has a civilized society, as we've viewed the progression of crime and punishment, it has changed considerably based on science, based on forensic science, based on our context of fairness and justice. So what we think today is the proper treatment of the restoration of rights may not be where society is even 10 years from now. So I would just ask that we use some prudence here and actually vote for this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. Do any senators other than the patron wish to be heard on Senate Joint Resolution 283? Seeing none, Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Senator, has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in opposition to the proposed amendment by my friend, the senator from the city of Roanoke. And he actually introduced a similar amendment, I believe, in the committee, which was not adopted at that time. But I just would like to frame it. I know a number of people have already spoken to it, and we're using a good bit of time today. But just want to frame it just a little bit. First, I'd like to share with the body, and I hope I've exemplified this over the years. I'm a strong advocate for restorative justice. Restorative justice, and I think many of you are familiar with that concept and embrace the tenets of that. Some would consider it a liberal concept, but I think it's a concept that's good, restorative justice. So I embrace that, and I think that's what I intended with this particular resolution. The So in essence, we've discussed this numerous times in different forms, and I think the form that it came to without this amendment is in pretty much the spirit of what we've dealt with in previous years. Certainly have worked over the past 20 years. Certainly former Senator Yvonne Miller, carried this before. I've worked on it before. Others of you, Senator Whipple, former senator, worked on it, and we've tried to advance this. What we have a situation now which the governor can do certain things, and we have denied ourselves the ability to do those same things. This does not limit any governor's ability for the restoration of rights. What it does is allow a constitutional amendment which would give us the authority through statute to define how we would react to that. The senator from the city of Roanoke's amendment seeks to remove the provision about barrier crimes. And I think, and if you read it closely in the bill, you'll see that the barrier crime reference is not in reference to the statute that we have for barrier crimes, which is used as a mechanism to screen people from critical jobs dealing with children, elderly, disabled. This modifies it so that it's a barrier crime that we would put in place that would be a barrier to having your rights, your voting rights, restored automatically through this statute. That's what it is. The barrier rights section, actually, I got an introduction to that much more, and I won't go on long. I had a story I was going to share, and I'll just share briefly. I tried to avoid the Courts of Justice Committee because if you can get through the Senate, which sometimes I do, then you've got to go to the House Courts of Justice Committee. All right. I had a constituent that wanted to adopt a foster child. The problem was the man 20 years ago had a little run-in with the law, and he had a crime which was viewed as a barrier crime. 20 years later, the good family wanted to adopt the child. So I put in a bill to give the Department of Social Services director the option of going ahead and certifying this as acceptable as for foster care. Well, we got it through the Senate and over in the House. We got into this long conversation about the barrier crimes and how it was all messed up. The upshot of it was they said, if you can figure out the barrier crime section, you come back to us. So next year, I came back to amend the barrier crime section. Well, there are like 125 references to barrier crimes, all assorted there. But I would say I had a lot of help from legislative services, and we sorted the whole thing out, got it through the Senate, took it over. I invested 6 to 8 hours time in front of the Courts of Justice Committee, either sitting there or bantering with them, coming back. And we finally actually passed a revision to the barrier crime section. I'm very proud of that. You're for last. We got it there. Now, this is not about those barrier crimes. This is about modifying what we would put in statute. The other provision, the other thing I want to cite, I was approached yesterday fairly aggressively, and I became aggressive myself in defending what I was trying to do by the director that we all know, and she's a friend, and she and I agree sometimes, from the American Civil Liberties Union. And we talked back and forth, and we could not quite come to agreement. And so finally I put the question to her, well, where are you with this? And this is her position. And some of you may support this. I do not. She said, I don't think we should ever take the voting rights away. They should be able to vote while they are in prison. I said, okay, now I understand. I can't go there. I don't believe the majority of our citizens can go there. In framing an issue as a constitutional amendment, I agree that you don't want too much in it, but you want enough in it that you know that the people in the referendum that are voting on this will understand what we're going to do with it. And I think we're putting just enough information in there for them to understand that we want to create an opportunity for individuals through restorative justice to be able to come back out and to vote and to participate, but they've got to meet certain conditions, and I think it's very appropriate. So I would urge you to vote against the gentleman's amendment.
Thanks, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Noes have it. The floor amendment fails. Seeing at least 8 hands, we'll have a recorded vote. All those in favor of adopting the floor amendment will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. The floor amendment fails. Senator from Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would now move that the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading.
Thanks, Senator. The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Joint Resolution 306, proposing an amendment to Section 6 of Article 2 of the Constitution of Virginia and proposing an amendment to the Constitution of Virginia by adding in Article 2 a section numbered 6A relating to apportionment, Virginia Redistricting Commission. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute, and we have several floor amendments.
Senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker.
Mr. President, I move that this be passed by for one more day. So,
without objection, Senate Joint Resolution 306 will be passed by for the day. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President, and a good morning to you. Inquiry of the clerk. Does that complete today's calendar?
Yes, sir.
Thank the Senator. Is there any other business to come before the Senate?
Mr. President.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville.
Point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor. But ask all members to please take their seats.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. First one's pretty quick. I walked into this chamber today and had a laptop that didn't speak to the internet for about 45 minutes. And I just want to say that Jonathan Palmore is a genius. He took my computer back and did some kind of brain surgery. It came out and it worked. And thank God, because I wouldn't have been able to read anything had he not done that. So we have a wonderful IT staff here. Probably saved me a ship back to UPS. So, yeah. But, Mr. President, I want to talk about something more serious just really quickly. You heard yesterday from the senator from Northern Fairfax, who's wearing her purple today, about I think she was channeling Aaron Burr. My family went and watched Hamilton last year up in New York City. And there's a song in Hamilton where Hamilton laments the fact, or Burr laments the fact that an immigrant and two Virginians walked into a room. And when they came back out, the immigrant had unbridled financial power over the United States, and the two Virginians had a capital in their state, nation's capital. And he lamented, and no one was in the room when it happened. And I think later in the show, I think it was Burr, Hamilton, one of them said, "I want to be in the room when it happens." And right now, we're not in the room when it happens, when it comes to tax conformity. And last time I checked, I think it takes 12 votes from this side, plus or minus, to get any kind of tax conformity done. And this side, I think, has not been really consulted on that yet. I read in the paper today that some other folks are talking about trying to separate conformity issues from policy issues. I think a lot of us think that's probably a good idea, because even though we have passed conformity later in session, this year's different. This year's very different. If you look at what the U.S. Congress did to the tax code, what they normally do is little tweaks here and there. I mean, a little nip, a little tuck. So our conformity bill isn't a big deal, and so the accounting profession isn't all that worried about what the returns are going to look like. What Congress did last year on our U.S. tax code was probably like a heart transplant. They probably sewed a new leg on. They created some, three-legged monstrosity with a new brain. And it's some major, major, major tax changes. And what I've heard is that if we don't conform, we're looking at like a 40-page tax return. And nobody knows what paper to file. Nobody knows. Quicken can't even figure out how to rewrite TurboTax, which God knows by now they're not going to be able to do that if we don't conform. And this year's different, which is why we need to figure out the conformity piece fast. The policy can wait, but the conformity needs to happen fast, or we're going to have a train wreck on our hands. And so I would just encourage the other side to reach out, give us some love. Don't let that what's going on across the river from my district bleed down here. Show some bipartisan spirit here, because we got to talk and get this done and get it done quick. It can't wait till the end of session. We're going to have a big problem. And if this body's going to govern, we got to lead. And if we don't lead, we're going to have a train wreck. So, Mr. President, I would just hope we can figure it out soon, and figure it out in a bipartisan fashion, because if our votes are needed, we need to be talked to.
Thank the senator for not throwing away his shot. Appreciate that very much. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reluctantly rise for a point of personal privilege.
Senator has the floor.
I listened to the unusually succinct comments of the senator and his point on personal privilege, and I thank him for that, but I would say sometimes the recipe for legislation takes a little while to percolate and simmer so that you get the full flavor and savor of it, and I would suggest that that's where we are. And I would further say, Mr. President, that I'm starting to really feel the love embracing me over here from the comments that have been made the last 2 days on the point of personal privilege, and I just want you to know that I appreciate that affection. It makes me a kinder, gentler person. I would finally say that talking about taxes, I also went to see Hamilton right before Christmas, and it certainly taxed my bank account, I can tell you that. But if I remember correctly, the last song that was sung in the Hamilton play was actually by the wife. And it was who is going to tell and who is going to remember. And I can assure you that very soon we will tell and you will remember.
Please do not do that. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, the clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Tuesday, January 29th, 2019, the Committee on Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources will meet immediately upon adjournment at the chair's desk. Agriculture will meet immediately upon adjournment at the chair's desk. The Committee on Privileges and Elections will meet 15 minutes after adjournment in Senate Room 3 in the Capitol. The Committee on Local Government will meet 1/2 hour after adjournment in Senate Room A in the Pocahontas Building. The Finance Subcommittee on Education will meet at 3:30 p.m. in Subcommittee Room Number 1 on the 5th floor of the Pocahontas Building. Tomorrow, Wednesday, January 30th, 2019, the Finance Subcommittee on Public Safety will meet at 7:30 a.m. in the Senate Leadership Conference Room on the 6th floor of the Pocahontas Building. The Women's Legislative Roundtable will meet at 8:30 a.m. in the Tidewater Room on the 4th floor of the SunTrust Center. The Committee on Finance will meet at 9 o'clock a.m. in Committee Room B in the Pocahontas Building. The Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. in Senate Room 2 in the Capitol. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. in Senate Room 1 in the Capitol.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I rise for a couple announcements.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, the Subcommittee on Public Safety I'm going to tentatively say will meet at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, but we might push it back to another time till we can get all the remaining things from Courts of Justice, which meets tomorrow afternoon. So we're going to do accounting on that. But Mr. President, for everyone's schedule, we are coming down to a very short window before crossover, so there will be a number of committees that might have to have additional meetings. For example, I think you will hear that the Commerce and Labor Committee will be meeting on Thursday morning. So if you have something still pending before Commerce and Labor, I would not schedule anything on Thursday morning. We will likely also have Rules Committee meeting on Friday morning. And there is a possibility that we could have some committee meetings on Friday after session, depending on how some of those mornings go. So, Mr. President, just ask the members to be cognizant of the fact that we still have a number of bills to address and a very short window with which to address them.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise for two announcements.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the senator from Hanover just reminded us we are pressing up on crossover, and the number of bills and the intensity of the pieces of legislation we're going to deal with are going to pick up. And just as a matter of very humble request, I would say that if all of the senators could compress their introductions for individuals in the gallery to 1 minute, that would be very, very helpful. We are getting longer and longer every day in that. And I say this not being disingenuous at all. It is very important that the citizens of the Commonwealth have access and come visit with us in the gallery. But I don't think that we necessarily have to go into such an extended introduction from conception to burial. So if we could, and as my good friend, the senior senator from Fairfax has told me, Tommy, stop wasting your effort on it, but I don't listen very well. And that's right, Senator Favola, I don't listen very well. That would be very helpful if perhaps we could try to limit it to 1 minute. Also, Mr. President, I would also remind us that many of us, unfortunately, become invested in our pieces of legislation and think we're going to change the rotation of the axis of the planet Earth. And I'm also aware that, there are some that, may even hope to move to other offices sometime in life. But I'm very mindful of something that I shared with Lieutenant Governor Don Beyer when I came in, and I reminded him that there was a guy named Disraeli that was fairly prominent in European history, and he said, in order for remarks to be memorable, they don't have to be eternal. Okay? So loquaciousness is marvelous if we're lawyers getting paid by the word, but I just say with what we are looking at in the intensity and the number of pieces of legislation, succinctness and brevity would certainly help. Also, I would remind once again that the rules of the Senate do provide that if you are in your seat, you must vote. And the reason I brought that up last week, as we get further closer to crossover, there are some bills that are probably going to be just mildly contentious, and I want to be certain that everybody has an opportunity to vote. Thank you. I share those remarks not with an admonition, but just trying to be practical as we move forward.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Fairfax.
I would just note that he spent about 7 or 8 minutes telling us not to talk.
I was going to say, I kind of lost track of time on that one. The irony is delicious, I think. The Senator from Hampton, Senator Locke.
Succinctly, the Democratic caucus would meet at 11 tomorrow.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be recognized? Seeing none, Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I rise for two purposes. One, to make an announcement, and the other is for a motion.
Senator's floor.
Mr. President, if possible, if Senators Black, Carrico, Donovan, and a few others could meet in the back room immediately upon adjournment, it would be helpful. Mr. President, with that, I would hope that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate stand in adjournment until 12 noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.